A survivalist mother takes her infant son on a day hike in the Blue Ridge Mountains and never returns. For 5 years, there's no sign of them, until two university students discover an impossible clue wedged in ancient stone. How could someone this skilled vanish with a baby? So, before continuing this mysterious story, let us know, where are you watching from? Let's begin the story. Noriko Ishioka had been hiking since before she could walk. Her parents were backcountry guides in Hokkaido. Her first memories framed not by four walls and ceiling lights but by pine needles, wet boots, and the hush of snowfall on sleeping mountains. By the time she was 15, she had summited every major peak in the southern Alps of Japan. At 20, she moved to the United States, following not just a passion for trail systems and untouched wilderness, but love. She met Emmy on a conservation project restoring wetlands in North Carolina. They married 2 years later, and Noriko became a dual citizen with a new home nestled against the spines of the Blue Ridge Mountains. Noriko wasn't just a hiker. She was a survivalist, a wilderness instructor, a woman who could fashion a windbreak shelter out of ferns and make fire from damp moss. Her idea of a relaxing weekend was mapping undocumented offshoot trails and testing water purification methods from the 1800s. But she was also a mother now, and that changed everything. On October 11th, 2018, Noriko took her 15-month-old son Asa on what was supposed to be a simple bonding hike through the western quadrant of Blue Ridge National Park, a 6-mile loop trail with moderate elevation, no major river crossings, and 3 clearly marked bailout points along the ridge. The kind of hike she'd done 100 times, the kind of trail she'd memorized the bends of, where her boots knew the rhythm of the stones beneath them. It was her world, her temple. But this time, she was taking her son, so she doubled the supplies, triple-checked the weather, left her GPS coordinates, logged both in her phone and a notebook on the hotel nightstand. She'd even pre-packed 3 extra diapers and a backup pack of Asa's favorite freeze-dried mango slices. That morning, she kissed Emmy goodbye outside their room at the Timberline Lodge in Waynesfield, Georgia. Asa was already strapped to her back in a bright yellow child carrier, humming a tune only he understood. Emmy snapped a quick photo of the two of them against the backdrop of a golden sunrise, and Noriko laughed, shielding her eyes. "We'll be back by 6, she said. "Dinner's on me." They never came back. The mountains held their breath. Time passed like dripping water. A day, then 2, then 5 years. But back on that day, there was no sense of foreboding. Nothing sinister. Just the early fall rustle of leaves underfoot and the cool tang of pine resin in the air. Noriko hiked with measured ease, taking frequent breaks to let Asa stretch his legs and point delightedly at squirrels. She filmed a short video of him toddling near a cluster of mushrooms and sent it to Emmy at 10:22 a.m. Along with it, she sent one photo. A selfie of the two of them. Noriko's black hair tied in a low braid, her skin flushed with exertion, her cobalt blue fleece unzipped just enough to show Asa's tiny hand peeking out from the yellow carrier on her back. Both of them were smiling. The message read, "Sky is endless today. See you soon." It was the last thing Emmy would ever receive. By 6:00 p.m., there was still no sign of them. Emmy paced the lodge room, telling herself not to panic. Noriko was cautious to a fault, and punctuality was practically a religion. But accidents happen. Maybe they stopped longer than expected to rest. Maybe Asa got fussy and slowed them down. At 7 o'clock, Emmy stepped outside, scanning the parking lot for their car. Nothing. At 7:45, she called Noriko's number. Straight to voicemail. She called again, and again. No answer. By 8:30, the silence had begun to hum with something darker. A buzzing tension behind Emmy's ribs. She checked the weather again. No rain, no drops in temperature, no alerts. She called the front desk, and asked if they'd seen Noriko. The clerk hadn't. She checked the hotel lot. Their Honda CR-V still sat exactly where it had that morning. Engine cold, untouched. At 9 p.m., Emmy called the National Park Dispatch. Her voice was steady, but her hands trembled as she relayed the details to the calm, practiced ranger on the other end. She gave Noriko's full name, age, height, what she was wearing, the time she left, and the planned trail route. She sent the photo. She forwarded the message. The ranger asked a few quiet questions. Was Noriko prone to impulsive detours? No. Did she ever hike without GPS backups? Never. Could she have decided to stay overnight in a shelter? Not without telling Emmy first. Could she be with friends? Absolutely not. By 9:30, the file had a case number, and Noriko Ishioka, survivalist and mother, was officially missing. Across the state line in Asheville, North Carolina, the alert reached the desk of Ranger Cameron Byrne, who had coordinated search and rescue missions across the entire southern Appalachian corridor. He was tall, deliberate, and famously unshakable. His job wasn't to panic. It was to find people. He looked at the selfie on his monitor for a long time. The vibrant yellow carrier, the blue fleece, Noriko's smile, Asa's wide, wondering eyes. In his gut, something sank. Missing hikers weren't rare. The Blue Ridge Mountains devour over-prepared urbanites every year. But this wasn't a tourist in jeans and a water bottle from Target. This was someone who respected the wilderness. Someone who understood its rules. That's what made it terrifying. If Noriko could vanish with a baby on her back, then something had gone catastrophically wrong. And the worst part? They were already behind schedule. Because in the wild, the clock doesn't tick. It crashes. And now, it was ticking louder than ever. The hotel room felt smaller by the minute. Its off-white walls were tinged with the yellow hue of outdated lighting, and the once cozy faux-quilted bedspread now looked sterile, a hospital sheet in disguise. Emmy sat in the armchair closest to the window, one foot tucked under her, the other bouncing in nervous rhythm. Outside, the lights of Waynesfield flickered faintly, a modest town bordering a vast, ancient wilderness. Beyond the line of buildings, the dark silhouette of the Blue Ridge Mountains stood like a waiting shadow. It was October 11th, 2018, 10:04 p.m. Emmy hadn't moved from that chair in almost an hour. The search had already begun. By the time Ranger Byrne confirmed the official classification of Noriko and Asa as missing persons, the machinery of response clicked into place. Calls went out to the park rangers closest to the trail system Noriko had logged in her notebook. Her vehicle was inspected again. Flashlights swept under the seats, behind the pedals. Her pack list, written in blocky, careful handwriting, was still folded in the glove compartment. Route, Tanbark Loop, clockwise. It read like a field report. No signs of distress, no red flags. But that was the problem. Everything was too neat, too perfect. She knew the risks, Emmy whispered to herself, her voice catching. She prepared for all of them. The clock on the nightstand ticked to 10:09 p.m., and Emmy finally rose. Her legs were stiff, her head buzzing with the exhaustion that doesn't come from the body, but from the soul. She moved like someone underwater, slow, distant, waiting for a sound that wouldn't come. She walked to the table where Noriko's laptop still sat open, the screen dark. Next to it was her laminated topographical map of the trail, marked with tiny red flags at each mile. Emmy hovered her fingers above the map, then closed her eyes. "Where are you?" she said aloud, the words nearly swallowed by the soft hum of the air conditioner. Noriko was the kind of person who left nothing to chance. She had planned this trip around Asa's sleep schedule, down to the trail's estimated exposure time to afternoon sun. She carried a water filter, satellite beacon, and even a small plush fox to keep Asa calm if he got scared. She didn't take unnecessary risks. She respected the wild, and she never underestimated it. Which is why the fear Emmy felt wasn't vague. It wasn't a creeping anxiety. It was surgical, specific. There were only a handful of things that could have gone wrong. Things even Noriko couldn't anticipate. At 10:21 p.m., Emmy dialed Noriko's parents. She hated doing it, but there was no longer room for denial. She kept her voice even, speaking in Japanese, explaining slowly, clearly. Noriko had taken Asa on a short hike. No, they hadn't returned. Yes, the authorities were searching. No, she didn't need them to come, yet. She hung up before her own voice could betray her. The next morning, a heavy gray light filtered in through the blinds. Emmy hadn't slept. She sat again by the window, watching as two rangers arrived to knock gently on the door. She let them in. They were kind, professional. They asked her to go over everything, again. Emmy did. The same details, the same timeline. Noriko left at 6:32 a.m. Her last message came at 10:22 a.m. The trail. Tanbark Loop. A 6-mile moderate circuit. Weather, clear skies. Supplies, checked. Vehicle, untouched. Then they asked the question that tilted everything. Was Noriko carrying a phone? Emmy blinked. Of course. And a backup solar charger. And an offline map app. The Rangers exchanged a glance. We haven't found any pings from her phone. No signal since 10:25. It's as if the device just ceased. The silence that followed was thick. Emmy didn't need to be told what that meant. It wasn't just that the GPS failed. It wasn't just that reception was bad. It was the suddenness, the finality. The Rangers stayed another hour, showing Emmy printed maps, marking search zones, giving her a list of contact numbers. One of them, a younger man with sun-chapped skin and tired eyes, paused at the door before leaving. We're not giving up, he said. She's one of us. It was meant to comfort. It only made the ache sharper. Over the next 48 hours, the Timberline Lodge became a base of operations. Emmy rarely left the room. She drank coffee she couldn't taste. She answered calls from law enforcement, from friends, from Noriko's former students. She turned down media requests. She stared at the one photo she had of that day, Noriko's final selfie. Her wife's face was radiant with sunlight. Asa, half asleep in the carrier, his small hand gripping the strap like it was an anchor. They looked like joy distilled. They looked invincible. But they were gone. The first search teams returned late on October 12th. Nothing. No prints, no lost items, no trail markers. The dogs had tracked a faint scent along the trailhead, but lost it half a mile in. One of the handlers shook his head. Too many scents, too many trails. The forest here was old, dense. Sound didn't travel. Light got lost in the canopy. A person could be 20 feet away and invisible. Emmy wanted to go into the woods herself, but they wouldn't let her. Liability, risk. She was too emotional, they said. They didn't know that emotion was the only thing keeping her upright. Each night she waited by the window, watching headlamps flicker along the ridgeline, hoping one would veer, pause, and signal. None did. On October 14th, Ranger Byrne returned. He'd been coordinating aerial grid patterns, working with other agencies. He sat with Emmy for nearly an hour, not as an officer, as a man. He told her the truth, that the first 72 hours were the most critical, that Noriko had every tool, every skill, and that made this worse, that the lack of a single clue meant something catastrophic. Emmy nodded. Her hands were clasped in her lap. She didn't cry. She didn't blink. She just said one thing. She would never leave him. Not by choice. Not for a second. Byrne nodded slowly. I believe you. The next morning, the search expanded. Helicopters, drones, volunteers. The lodge was overrun with gear, maps, walkie-talkies. Emmy, stood at the trailhead as the sun rose and whispered into the trees, "Come home." The forest didn't answer, and for now, neither did Noriko. By day 6, the mountain had grown quiet. The early waves of searchers, clad in neon vests and chattering radios, had begun to retreat. Not because they'd given up, but because they had nothing left to follow. There were no new leads, no threads, no trails. It was as though Noriko and Asa had been airlifted out of the forest by some invisible force, vanished into leaf and soil. But then came the backpack. It was 7:14 a.m. on October 17th when a volunteer, David Renteria, a geology student from Asheville, radioed in from a ravine near the outer edge of the Tanbark Loop. He had gone off trail, following a game path downhill to a trickling stream, when something yellow caught his eye beneath a blanket of fallen leaves. He pushed aside the debris. There it was, a child carrier, bright yellow, slightly scuffed, the same one from the photo. He didn't touch it. He called it in, marked his location, and waited. Within 25 minutes, a team had descended the slope, roped in from the ridge above. Photos were taken, measurements logged. The carrier was lifted, turned gently. Inside, there was no sign of Asa. No blood, no tearing. But the pack was unzipped, half its contents missing. The child's jacket was gone, the bottle too. But the plush fox was still there, mud-caked, but intact. Emmy was called to the ranger station just before noon. She didn't cry when they showed her the photos, just nodded slowly and said, "Yes, that's his." A forensic team combed the surrounding area. They found partial impressions in the soil, too vague to be identified as adult or child, but no definitive footprints, no drag marks, no signs of a struggle. And most puzzling of all, no other gear, no fire pit, no discarded wrappers, no adult backpack. It made no sense. Could she have left it behind intentionally? One ranger asked. Not unless she was forced, Emmy replied. Back at the base station, the backpack was examined with care. The zippers had no signs of force. The contents, though disorganized, showed no signs of animal interference. And the carrier straps, the ones that had cradled Asa's small body, were fully buckled, as though someone had taken him out carefully, gently. It chilled everyone in the room, but what chilled them more came the next day. A hiker named Grace Warren had been on the southern ridge of the trail loop when she noticed something strange at the base of a fir tree. A plastic wrapper. Clean, modern, not unusual, except it was the exact brand of freeze-dried mango Noriko had packed for Asa. Further inspection revealed another clue. About 10 feet from the wrapper, buried under pine needles and loose bark, was a single child sock, blue, with a small embroidered bear on the cuff. It matched a pair Emmy confirmed had been packed that morning. Search patterns were recalculated. Drone flights were reoriented. But the finds stopped there. No additional clothing, no human traces, no tech, and still, no phone signal from Noriko's device. Then came the most frustrating discovery of all. A week later, a satellite imagery review team from a private rescue tech firm offered to assist. They had access to high-resolution thermal and visual satellite data, some of which had captured partial snapshots of the forest canopy on the day of Noriko's disappearance. It took days to compile and analyze the footage, frame by frame. Most of it was useless, cloud-covered, distorted, or too grainy. But one image stood out. Taken at 10:47 a.m., just 25 minutes after Noriko's last message, it showed a heat signature in a clearing a few hundred yards north of the trail path. Two distinct shapes, one larger, one smaller, both upright, motionless. The timestamp and location matched. And then, nothing. No movement on subsequent images, no heat, just void. Authorities held back the photo from public release. It wasn't proof, but it was the closest thing to a sighting. And it didn't bring relief. Because if that was them, why did they stop moving? Emmy stared at the printout for almost an hour. The red-orange blobs glowed like ghosts against the black and white map. They weren't lost, she said quietly. No, Byron agreed. They stopped. Or were stopped, she whispered. The implications were impossible to ignore. The official theory was adjusted. Noriko had suffered an unknown medical emergency. She became disoriented. Asa was taken from the carrier, and she attempted to seek help, then succumbed to exposure or accident. But that didn't explain the lack of remains, or the missing gear, or why no trace had ever been found of Noriko herself. Unofficially, a darker theory took root. Abduction. It seemed unthinkable, impossible, but some rangers off the record admitted they'd seen stranger. The Blue Ridge Mountains were vast, laced with caves, abandoned shacks, and stretches of land untouched in generations. Entire communities once lived in those woods before the park was founded. Not all had left, and there were stories, old ones, hikers who heard their own names whispered in the trees, campsites that vanished overnight, GPS watches that stopped cold at the same trail marker every time. Most were dismissed. But then came the radio call. October 30th, nearly 3 weeks since Noriko's disappearance. A ranger out of Ridge Hollow Station was running maintenance on an old fire tower deep in the northern sector when his handheld radio, on Channel 6, long considered inactive, crackled to life. Static, then a burst, and then a voice, female, barely audible. 5 words. Don't stop, he's not alone. Then silence. No repeat transmission, no trace. The voice was recorded, analyzed, compared to Noriko's past voicemail logs. The cadence was a match. The tone, too degraded to confirm. But Emmy didn't need confirmation. She heard it once and whispered, "That's her." Byrne wasn't sure, but he didn't dismiss it. He played it again. "Don't stop. He's not alone." Was it a warning? A message? A hallucination born of grief? They didn't know. All they knew was that the mountain had given something back. Not enough, but something. And now they had to listen. By November, the trail had officially gone cold. The formal search had ended. The press cycle slowed. The public's attention, so quick to rise, had begun to move on. But some things refused to settle. Because this wasn't a case of a lost hiker, nor a simple misstep. This was Noriko Ishioka, and none of it made sense. Emmy stopped sleeping. She pored over maps, thermal images, dispatch reports. She created a timeline down to the minute, traced and retraced Noriko's likely route, wrote letters to park authorities, tracked rumors on internet forums, anything. But every answer just led to more questions. There were no signs of a fall, no bones found in ravines, no blood, no torn clothing. The child carrier had been left, intact, deliberately. The child removed without force. The survival pack was gone, and the voice on Channel 6, still unexplained. The forums lit up. People proposed theories, some rational, others not. Theory 1. Sudden psychosis. A few armchair analysts suggested Noriko suffered a mental break, maybe postpartum, that she'd wandered off into the woods in a fugue state and perished. But her record showed no mental illness. And if she had lost clarity, why was Asa so carefully removed from the carrier? Why was the pack zipped, not torn? Why no signs of disorientation in her last message? Theory 2. Animal attack. Some suggested a bear, a cougar, but no prints were found. No signs of a struggle. And no animal in that region would unzip a carrier, take a child, and leave a toy behind. Theory 3. Voluntary disappearance. This was briefly considered, that Noriko had planned her own vanishing. But there was no motive, no debt, No past secrets, no burner phone, no cash withdrawals. And she had made dinner plans, left her GPS coordinates, kissed Emmy goodbye. Nothing pointed to escape. Theory 4. Abduction. This theory held more weight. Someone else was in the woods that day. A stranger. Maybe someone watching, waiting. But no tire tracks had been found near unauthorized trailheads. No other hikers reported seeing anyone suspicious. Noriko was known to be vigilant. She would have noticed. She would have fought. Unless she didn't have time. Unless she knew them. But even then, how would they disappear so cleanly? Theory 5. The unseen. Then came the stranger theories. Ones whispered on forums like Trail Lore and Ranger Shadow. That the Blue Ridge Mountains weren't empty. That there were things deeper than roots. Older than trails. Some spoke of the Quiet Ones, a local legend about forest dwellers who live off-grid, never aging, never seen. Others spoke of rips in time, places where people fall between cracks in the world. Stories of hikers who walked into a mist and never came out. Or who came back, changed. Speaking in riddles. Or not at all. One user claimed to have heard Asa crying, weeks after the search ended, while hiking near the same ravine. No child was found. Another said his compass spun violently at the trail bend, where the thermal image was captured. None of it was verified. But it started to echo, and then came the photograph. 6 months later, in April, a family on vacation in Tennessee posted a photo online. Just a casual snapshot from their hike. A mother and daughter by a waterfall. Nothing unusual. Except in the background, near the tree line, someone spotted a shape, blurred but distinct. A woman, with dark hair, wearing a cobalt fleece, carrying something yellow. The post went viral. Investigators got involved. The original photo was examined by analysts, enhanced, stabilized. The conclusion? Inconclusive. The image lacked enough resolution for certainty. It could have been pareidolia, a shadow, a trick of the light, but Emmy saw it, and she knew. That's her. The photo was taken over 80 miles from Noriko's last known location, across state lines, through forest, rivers and ridges, places no one would reach without roads, unless they never left the woods, unless they stayed inside it. The theory shifted again. Not dead, not taken, still there, surviving, somewhere. It changed everything. Byrne reopened the file, quietly, off the books. He reassembled a team of trackers, people who knew how to read the land like a language, people who didn't scare easy, because if Noriko was alive, they had to find her, and if she wasn't alone. They needed to know who was with her, and why they had taken a child. Not all mysteries beg for resolution. Some beg to stay buried. But this one? It wanted to be found. And the mountain wasn't done speaking. Not yet. Byrne didn't tell anyone where they were going. Just that they'd need cold weather gear, 4 days rations, and that they'd be packing light. No GPS, no phones. Only radios, and even those, only on analog. The search wasn't sanctioned. Not officially. The park had moved on. Case closed. No new evidence. But Byrne couldn't let it go. Not after the photo. Not after the voice. So he called in favors. Quiet ones. 2 former SAR operatives. 1 local guide. And Emmy. She wasn't invited at first, but she showed up anyway, with Noriko's old hiking journal in hand, and something in her eyes that said, "You can't leave me behind." Byrne didn't argue. They entered the woods on May 9th. Not from the main trailhead. That had been combed too many times. Instead, they went in from the north face, steeper, less marked, riddled with old logging roads long since faded into moss and root. For 2 days, they moved silently, methodically, following topography, animal paths, water flow. Every so often, Emmy would stop, flip through the journal, find a passage. Here, she said on the second morning, pointing to a ridgeline. She wrote about this spot once. Said it felt off. Byrne marked it on the map. They camped in a gully that night. No fire, just whispering pines and the distant sound of a whippoorwill. Then came the knocking. 3 sharp raps. Not woodpecker, not wind, deliberate, patterned. They froze, radios off, lights out. The guide whispered, "Might be echo." But no one echoed back. At dawn, they found nothing. But the air had changed. On day 3, they found the scarf, tangled in bramble, faded blue, tattered, but clearly once expensive. Emma recognized it instantly. "She wore this in college," she said. "She almost never brought it hiking. Said it was too nice." So why was it here? They moved deeper. That afternoon, they came upon a clearing, circular, unmarked on any map, surrounded by black pines, bent slightly inward, as though pulled by something at the center. The ground was scorched, not burned, scorched, brittle, gray and glassy. Byrne knelt, ran a hand over the surface. No signs of a fire ring, no ash, no logs, just heat. "Lightning strike?" the Sarop asked. "Maybe," Byrne said. But he didn't believe it. That night, the radios crackled again. But this time, there were no words, just breathing. Close, ragged, then gone. They didn't sleep. Day 4, everything changed. They found the circle. Not the clearing. Something else. A ring of stones, deliberately placed. Moss scraped off. Tiny runes etched into the surface, none recognized. In the center, a child's toy. The plush fox. Clean. Untouched. Same one that had been recovered weeks ago. But this was a second. Or the same. Emmy fell to her knees. "This isn't right," she whispered. "This doesn't make sense." Then, static. The radio flared. Channel 6. This time, clearer. A voice. Noriko's. "You're close, but don't follow the path." Then nothing. The guide looked pale. "We should go. Now." But Emmy stood. "No. We keep going." They pressed on, past the circle into denser growth. Trees leaning wrong, air heavier, compass needles drifting. Then, footprints. Small, bare, leading downhill into a ravine. They followed. At the base, an opening, narrow, carved into stone, not natural. A tunnel. Emmy stepped forward. "We have to see." Byrne hesitated, and then the radio buzzed one final time. "He's waiting." Not Noriko's voice, a child's. "Asa." They entered the dark, and the mountain closed behind them. No one spoke for the first 100 feet. The tunnel sloped downward, then leveled out. Walls slick with condensation, ceiling low enough that they had to crouch. Their headlamps cast narrow cones of light, fractured by mist. There were no natural markings, no mineral streaks, no roots breaking through. Just smooth stone, like something carved with precision, but long ago. Emmy led. She moved with a calm that unnerved the others. Her mother's journal gripped tight in one hand, the radio in the other. After 20 minutes, they reached a chamber, round, silent. The walls rippled, like the interior of a seashell. At the center, a pedestal. On it, a small wooden box. Byrne approached, hand out. Emmy stopped him. "She wrote about this," she said. "In the last entry. Said it would be here." "How?" the guide whispered. Emmy opened the box. Inside, a photograph. Old, faded, black and white. A woman standing at the mouth of a cave, holding a child. Both faces scratched out. On the back, 6 words, scrawled in Noriko's handwriting. "Don't trust the one who smiles." The radio buzzed. Noriko's voice, clearer now. "I'm close, but he is too." The light flickered. The Serap turned, shouted, but the words came out warped, slowed, like molasses. Then, a shadow moved. Across the wall, thin, long-limbed, not cast by anyone in the room. They drew weapons. Flashlights swung. Nothing. Then came the smell. Cedar. And something older, like damp earth and copper. The guide fell to his knees, whispering, "It's the below. The old place. We shouldn't be here." No one argued. But there was only one way forward. A second tunnel, narrower, spiraling down. Emmy stepped into it without hesitation. The others followed. The air grew colder, denser. They passed symbols etched into stone. Circles, eyes, a spiral that never ended. Byron marked the turns. Breadcrumbs scratched into the wall with a blade. But the marks faded behind them, literally, vanishing. After an hour, they reached a fork. Left, darkness. Right, a faint glow, greenish, like bioluminescence. The guide begged them to go left. Light is worse, always worse. But Emmy chose right. The chamber opened wide, impossible to measure. A cathedral beneath the earth, at the center, a pool. Still, perfect, black. Hovering above it, impossible geometry, shapes that twisted when not looked at, forms that felt like they pressed against the inside of your skull. And there, on the far side, stood Noriko. Or something shaped like her. She was barefoot, eyes closed, arms at her sides. Emmy stepped forward. "Mom?" Noriko's eyes opened, but they were black, not dark, black, like the absence of light. And then, she smiled, just like the warning. Don't trust the one who smiles. The room shifted. Sound vanished. The others screamed, but no noise came out. The pool began to ripple. The geometry spun. And the thing that looked like Noriko stepped forward. But so did Emmy. She pulled the journal from her bag, held it aloft, began to read. Not aloud, in her mind. The room reacted. The smile faltered. The geometry slowed. Then the real voice came. Noriko's, from everywhere. Burn the page. Baron lit a match, touched it to the final page of the journal. The fire caught instantly. Blue flames, no smoke. The smiling thing shrieked, soundless but thunderous. The walls cracked. The pool erupted upward. And just like that, it was gone. The thing, the geometry, the echo. Only Noriko remained, collapsed on the stone, eyes closed, breathing. Emmy ran to her, cradled her, whispered her name. Noriko stirred. "Asa?" Emmy wept. "No, it's me." Noriko opened her eyes. "Then we're not done." Above them, the tunnel began to collapse. They had to move, back into the dark, up toward the surface. But now, with answers, and more questions than ever before. They didn't speak as they climbed. The tunnel groaned around them, shedding stone and dust like a dying animal. Noriko was weak, barely able to walk. Emmy and Byrne carried her, switching every few minutes. The others led the way, radios off, heads down. They reached the chamber with the pedestal. The box was gone. The walls were cracked now, rippled like wax too close to flame. Something had shifted, like the mountain itself had exhaled. The mist was thicker. Time moved strangely. Watches had stopped, batteries dead. Only Emmy's analog compass remained. And even that jittered every few seconds like a shiver. It took them 5 hours to reach the surface. But when they stepped into the light, the sun was in the wrong place. Not just a little. Byrne checked his map, then his shadow, then looked at the trees. Some were budding, some weren't. Spring and fall, stitched together. Like time had split open and leaked. The guide muttered something under his breath. In between, we're still not out. They set camp near the ridge, no fire, no speaking. Noriko hadn't said a word since the cave. She just sat by the edge of the clearing, staring into the woods. Not blinking, not moving, as if waiting for something to follow them out. Emmy tried to reach her, touch her hand. Noriko pulled away. "She's still in there," Emmy said quietly to Byrne. He didn't answer, because he wasn't sure which Noriko she meant. That night, Byrne stood watch. Just past 2 a.m., the radio flared. Static. Then a whisper. "Asa, still here." Burns scanned the tree line. Nothing, but the hairs on his arms lifted. The whisper came again. Same voice, but closer. He checked the radio. Channel 1. No signal. But then Noriko stood. She walked to Burns slowly, eyes empty. "He's not done," she said. "He just changed shape." And then she handed him something. A stone. Black. Warm to the touch. Perfectly round. "I found it in the pool, before the lights." Byrne pocketed it. Unsure why. They left at dawn. Navigating out took longer than expected. Trails shifted. Markers disappeared. Landmarks looked off. But eventually, after 3 more days, they found a service road. A ranger vehicle passed. Shocked to see them. They'd been gone 13 days, not 4. Back in town, everything felt normal. Too normal. Phones worked, news played, weather was fine. But Byrne kept the stone in his pocket. And Noriko, still silent, refused to sleep indoors. The local hospital checked her vitals. All normal. But one thing stood out. Her blood work showed elevated cortisol, extreme stress, and a foreign protein, one not cataloged in any known database. They logged it, classified it, filed it away. No further questions. Emmy didn't return home. She stayed in the town, renting a small room near the trailhead, visiting Noriko daily, writing down everything they remembered. And sometimes, she still hears the voice. From her phone, from the static, from the forest edge. It always says the same thing. "You took her back, but I'm still here." As for Byrne, he left the Park Service, moved inland, built a cabin off-grid, but every so often he checks the sky, because sometimes the stars look different, not dimmer, just rearranged. And that's when he feels the stone in his pocket grow warm, not burning, just alive, and waiting. 2 months passed. Noriko still hadn't spoken. She walked every morning, same path, down to the tree line, stopped, looked, returned. Her sleep was shallow, her eyes wrong. Still Noriko, but not fully. Like her edges didn't match the light around her. Emmy kept writing, recording everything. Dreams, whispers, glitches in the day. Sometimes she lost time. Sometimes she'd see her reflection blink twice. Then came the photographs, blurry shapes in the background, in mirrors, in window panes. Always watching, always smiling. At first, Emmy thought it was pareidolia. Then she found one inside the old journal, one that hadn't been there before. Byrne called from his cabin. The stone had cracked. Not broken, just a hairline fracture. But it pulsed. Light, not bright, but steady. And the animals were gone. Birds, foxes, even the insects. Silent. He buried the stone, 5 feet deep. Marked the spot, but that night, it was back in his cabin, on his table. Still warm, still humming. Emmy drove out to see him. They walked the woods, retracing steps, looking for something, anything, to explain it. They didn't find answers. They found symbols, etched into trees, under leaves, some old, some new. And they heard the voice again. Not a whisper now. A song, wordless, low, carried on the wind. Byrne said nothing, just handed Emmy the stone. It didn't burn her, but she felt it, like a heartbeat that wasn't hers. Back in town, Noriko drew a map. No one asked her to. She just did. Rough lines, angles, places that didn't exist. But when Emmy overlaid it on a topographic chart, they matched. Only one spot wasn't on any official map. An unmarked depression in the foothills. She and Byrne went. The trail was fresh, as if recently walked. At the center, a cairn, stones stacked in a spiral. They removed them carefully. Underneath, another box. Wooden. Familiar. Inside, a photograph. Emmy as a child. Standing beside Noriko. But Noriko's face was missing. Not scratched, just blank. On the back. "You came back, but not alone." That night, Noriko spoke. 4 words. "He wears your face." Then she collapsed. Doctors said stroke. Severe neurological event. But her brain scans showed something else. Activity in areas normally dormant. Dream state patterns. Theta waves spiking without sleep. And deep in the brainstem, a signal. Pulsing, like a beacon. It broadcast once, then stopped. No one knew what it said. But 2 days later, the ranger station at the base of Mount Naraka burned down, cause unknown. The guide who'd helped them vanished. Left his gear behind. No signs of struggle, just gone. And in the last page of Emmy's new journal, a message appeared. She didn't write it. She swears she didn't. But it's in her handwriting. "You were never meant to leave." They buried the box, deep this time. But that night, the stone was back on Emmy's desk, still warm, still humming, still waiting. And that's where the trail ends, for now. But if you ever find yourself near Naraka and the wind carries a tune you almost recognize, don't hum along, don't follow it, and whatever you do, don't smile back. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, because tomorrow we have another special story for you.